Thank you all for coming out and starting your day learning about modern team sites. My name is Jeremy Masner. I'm the Group Program Manager in the engineering team for SharePoint, the same team that builds SharePoint Online as well as SharePoint 2016 and our future on-premises releases. And my team focuses precisely on empowering teams to collaborate better together through the team site and through integration with the rest of Office 365. So I'm going to be really excited to show off the work that the team is doing. I'll kind of take you through a tour of where we are, talk about some things that are coming, and leave plenty of time for questions because I know there's lots of folks that have interesting things they want to hear more details about. If nothing else, I want you to walk away with this idea. The team site is the place where we bring together the productivity of OneDrive and the power of SharePoint. Everything we've done in our new UX refresh and our capabilities and our integration with other partners is all about that combination of the productivity. You've all seen the new OneDrive user experience. You've seen the new OneDrive sync experience. You've seen the OneDrive mobile apps. We want to bring all that productivity into the core SharePoint team collaboration, but not lose that sense of the power of SharePoint for richer content management scenarios. So that's what we'll look at today. There we go. So I'll start off mostly with demo. I'll do a little bit of talking, and then we'll spend some good quality time looking at the product, seeing what we've built. I'll then step back a little bit and talk kind of why we chose to build it that way, the things that we think about, the principles that guide where we make investments in TeamSite. I'll talk a little bit about governance, because I know that's a top concern for a lot of people, especially as we move into a more democratized, self-service creation kind of world. And I'll show a little bit of sneak preview of some things that are coming up in the next few months, and then we'll have time for questions. OK, so what is the team site? Why do you create a team site? If you guys heard Jeff Tieper in some of the previous keynotes, I think he summed it up pretty well. In Office 365, we have these groups, which are a set of people who work together, and the team site is where they go to get their content work done. It's really the hub for all your content-based collaboration. So we've got together, we've got lists, we've got libraries, we've got the new modern publishing pages that we'll talk about. We've got news, which is a thing we introduced on Monday as a capability for both keeping people up to date on what's happening in the team site, but also collecting news across team sites in your organization. So when you work in multiple teams, you can actually get a view of what's happening across all those things together. And of course, they're all tied together with this notion of groups. A common platform across Office 365 so that your set of people who work together have all the capabilities they need, whether it's content-centric, conversation-centric, calendar, tasks. It all shares that same set of people. And then, right there in the middle, we've really been focusing on making sure that you can get to these experiences wherever, whenever you are. So we're moving away from just a strict web browser world to making sure that we have native apps on all the mobile platforms. We're making sure we've got a great, rich sync client, both on Windows and on Mac, so that wherever you are, when you need to get access and do work with people through your team sites, you have all the capabilities you need. So let's take a look at what that is, how all those things come together. OK, so I'm going to start off here in a fairly lightweight document library inside my team site, and we'll kind of work our way up in complexity. So the document library is one of the components of a team site. We give you one by default. You can add as many more as you want. Each one is a container for documents and some policy that goes around those things. And so at its most basic usage, it's just a shared folder for the team. We think that's a valuable thing. Lots of folks like to have one single document repository for their team. They always know where the team presentation is. They always know where to find their content. But we can get a lot richer than that. So let's look at some of the things we can do that are beyond just having a simple folder there. One thing we can easily do is add some extra metadata that's going to help us organize this content and keep better track of where we are in our team processes. So let's say that I want to have some kind of a review process for these documents, and they need to be assigned to someone. Well, it's really easy for me to extend that. I'm going to go ahead and just click plus here. And I'm going to add a new person column, and we will call it assigned to. OK, and just like that, what I've done is I've added some metadata that's available in this document library. Now, you can see that none of the documents have anything yet, because I just created it. But now we're able to edit any of these documents and start to extend with this extra data to keep track of the documents. So I can pick one of these guys. I'm going to open up our new info pane. And you'll see we get a little preview of the document here, and we get a view of all of the properties of the document. And I can just go over here to assigned, and I can send this one over to Navjot. Let's see if it looks her up. Oh, didn't find her. Let's try Chris. There's Chris, so I'll go ahead and assign that document to him. And you can see it's just added that data right there. So really simple ways to start to extend. Oh, hey, I got the people card. Very cool. Really simple ways to extend the document library so you can actually organize it and customize it in a way that makes sense and, again, is more than just a shared folder. So what we're looking at is our new user experience around document libraries. If you guys haven't seen this, I encourage you to take a look. We have it on now 100% in all of our production tenancies. So unless someone has explicitly turned it off, you should find all of your users opting into this experience. And one of the things we like about it is that it's made it possible to do things like add columns and change the views without having to go into advanced settings. So again, as we focus on the productivity, the learning from our colleagues in OneDrive, we wanted to bring as much of that directly into this experience and not have to go out and think about managing settings, going to library settings, going to site settings. So adding a column, you can see, is easy. When I want to change the view here, it's pretty easy. So for example, I can choose to group by who these things are assigned to. And you can see I'm changing the view right here. So I've got two clusters of people that it's assigned to, the unassigned and the ones that are assigned to Chris. I can actually change which columns I'm showing. So perhaps I'm not that interested in when a column was modified. I can just go over here. Whoops. One more try. All right, let's try from here. Hang on a sec. There we go. We'll show and hide columns. So here, this is, again, a feature that's been in SharePoint for years and years and years, part of the power of SharePoint, but it was sort of hidden behind a settings page, and now we've got it right here. So I can add this other field, and maybe I want to take away the modified field. Easy to do. I click Apply. It redraws my column set and puts them all up right there. I can save all these changes either as the current view, or I can save it off as a new view. So we'll go ahead and do that. Great. So now I've actually gone ahead and customized this document library to work a little bit more the way I want it to. We've also, I showed you one way to edit metadata, which is to go ahead and bring up the information panel, and you've got all the properties that are right there. But we also wanted to make it as productive, as intuitive as possible. So if you want to assign this document here to Chris, all you have to do is click it and drag it over here to this assigned to bucket. You can see the little tag icon shows up, and it tells us that it's going to reassign that to be belonging to Chris. So again, a lot of these capabilities have been in SharePoint for a long time. We're glad that we brought them forward in this new modern UX. One of the things that we were also really excited about in helping people work with documents is starting to add, make it easier to get to workflow and lightweight process. Again, some of you will be familiar with the history of workflow in SharePoint, but I think candidly it wasn't something that was readily accessible to most users. You had to be sort of an expert to know how to connect workflow up to a document library. So let me show you an example of how we're using Microsoft Flow to make it easier than ever to add some smarts on top of document libraries. So I have Flow open over here in another tab. And this is a really, really simple flow. So the story, sorry, I didn't really do my pitch behind this thing. But imagine that this is a folder where we've applied some extra policy. In fact, I have applied policy. In this folder, every document is protected with Information Rights Management, IRM. And it might also be sort of classified as needing to be retained because it's legally relevant content, something the company has to invest extra time in keeping around and keeping track of. That's a nice feature that you can do those things, but you also don't want people over-classifying content. You don't want to have to increase the burden on your compliance officers. So maybe in this folder, in this document library, someone wants to have a very simple workflow that says, when a new document is uploaded here, I want to have a quick review from someone on the legal team to make sure it actually is a document that needs all this extra attention. Okay, with that background, you can see what I've done here, which is I built a flow, which is really simple. It says when a file is created in this library, we're going to send an approval email. And you can dig in a little bit to see how we put this thing together, but we picked the URL of the site and the folder that we're working with. And then we added another action in Flow here, which is to send an approval email. And again, this is really quick. This took me just a couple minutes to build. I'm sending them all to myself, but you could imagine sending to someone else. We have a subject, which is compliance review, and then we actually take the name of the file. You can see we get, we zoom in here. you can see we get all these properties from the previous step, right? The previous step says when a file is created, and so Flow remembers and says, oh, you must have a file here. So you have its name, its path, all those sorts of things. So we've sort of put together a subject line, compliance review, and put the name of the file. And then I've added simple approval choices of either saying, yes, this thing is internal compliant, or no, it's not internal compliant. I haven't wired up the rest of the flow just because I wanted to keep it simple, but you would just add a new step here. And you could say you could add a condition so that you could say, if it is internal compliant, keep the file there. If it's not internal compliant, move it to the other document folder so that all that legal process doesn't kick in there. And what you can see when that happens is that I just get a little mail. So it looks like this. So here's one that I uploaded yesterday. Somebody put the holiday party plan into this internal only folder, which is probably not something that we need a ton of legal review and compliance on top of. And so I got this mail, and all I have to do is just say, hey, that thing is non-compliant, and it would kick off that flow and move it there. So there's lots of sessions that go into details about how you build flows and add them on top of libraries and lists. But I wanted to just highlight this as one of these areas where we're really working to sort of democratize the ability to customize your document libraries and your team sites. So things that used to take a lot of learning, a lot of reading, you have to buy a book or two, are now just a few clicks away. So we're really excited about that. The other thing I'll show you is some work that we're doing with documents in OneDrive, which we're really excited about. We think of OneDrive as our universal cloud file explorer for Office 365. So we want it to be the place where you can always get to all of the files that are relevant to you, not just your personal files here, but also all of the files that are attached to the groups and the team sites that you work with. So you can see right here in OneDrive, I've got this exact same site, Project Tahoe. I can click in. I'm staying in the OneDrive frame, but I've got all the documents. I've got those internal only documents. I can go around and browse to the rest of the site. And one of the nice things that we're actually introducing first in OneDrive, and we'll bring to the team site UX soon, is the ability to copy and move files between sites. So let's say I had something over here in Project Tahoe that I think really belongs in apparel design. I can just take my file over here. I can say copy to. Is that visible? Yep. Oops. That's an exciting people card. Go away. That person clearly did something very important. And what I've got here is not just the ability to copy it back to my personal OneDrive, but to any of the sites that I work with. So I can go over here, to the loyalty program. I can navigate through its document library, and I can just drop the document right in here or into a subfolder. So again, really trying to bring these sorts of things right to the foreground, make it easy to work with content, and move around in that way. And we'll look a little bit more towards the end of this portion of the demo at some other integrations that we've done with Mail in particular to help with that. Okay, so that's the document library. Again, the sort of core of actually working with documents in SharePoint. But team sites have other capabilities also. So I'm going to flip over here to a prettier looking team site where we've put a little more effort into building this thing together. So here's another take on a document library. This one, you'll notice, has some documents up here on top. These documents are pinned. So we've added a very simple action that you can take on any document in a library. In fact, I can go back to this one and just show you how it works. All you have to do is select a document. Up top, you've got pin. And it just sticks it up there at the top of the list. So it's a signal to other people in the team that this is an important document. Maybe it's one of the things you want everyone to have easy reference to. That document is right there at the top. Of course, you can unpin it so that as these things change over time, you can get rid of it and move it along. So that's what you're seeing up here in this document library. Let me flip over to a list now. We're going to go with rewards brainstorm. So a list is a simple, lightweight way to structure content that isn't a document. So if you're thinking about maybe a contact list, we use that, our team used it for coming out to Ignite. Everybody just put in their name, their phone number, what hotel they're staying at, when their session time is, so we could easily keep track of one another. Lots of places where you have these kind of lightweight data tracking things where you probably don't want to spin up a whole database, and maybe a spreadsheet feels like a little bit too clunky for trying to track things that are basically lightweight data entry. So we've got the SharePoint list here. It's just a collection of columns. Again, you customize them in the exact same way that I showed before. You just start clicking plus to add these things up. So here we have an example of a list of ideas that are coming in from our sales force and our field about ways we can reward customers by having a loyalty program. So people who are frequent purchasers of our clothes at Contoso Clothing can get some kind of a nice perk, something to motivate them to come back. And of course, we've got all the same capabilities for doing grouping. So we can go over here, say I want to group by the type of reward, and we're able to get a view that buckets all the things that way. We're able to do sorting, so I can go and say, why don't we make sure we're sorted from largest to smallest, so I can see the most popular items at the top of each of these areas. We can filter down, so if I want to see, gosh, what are the things that Alina's been working on and suggesting? I can see the 2 items that she sent us that way. Very easy to do those things. Again, of course, we're modifying this view. We don't automatically save it because we want to give people the flexibility to kind of explore with these things and not feel like they're changing the view for everyone else. But if you find a view that you like, you're always welcome to either save it back to the default or to create a new one there. One of the things I didn't show, actually I'll go quickly, is we actually have multi-level grouping now, which is a new feature for SharePoint. So here we have a single level group. We're just grouping by the type of reward. But over here, we've actually grouped, let me go to the right view. We've actually grouped by both status and region. So you'll be able to see, I clicked into the document, pardon me. There we go, status by region. So with the top level group here is the region column, where we've grouped everything based on East, International, National, and then underneath that we've grouped by the review status. So you get even sort of richer abilities to manipulate this kind of stuff, whether it's in a document library or in a list. Go back to our list over here. Now, of course, you can create new items in the list just by clicking new here, and we'll bring up a form where you can fill everything out. But again, we really wanted to focus on letting people be as productive as possible wherever they're working on any devices. And we've known for a while that it's been hard to get to some of this list data on a mobile device using SharePoint. So we wanted to provide a way to customize the form on top of this list so that you can make it look really great on a mobile phone, integrated with things like the camera and GPS and those sorts of things. We've had a forms solution for SharePoint for many years. We continue to support it. For folks who are going to have the inevitable info path question, we have the support lifecycle tied to SharePoint Server 2016. We're going to support info path for the full lifecycle of that server product. But we want to have a way that's a little bit more accessible, a little bit more modern for people to start building forms. And so we're investing a lot in this technology called Power Apps with another team at Microsoft to make it easy to build apps and forms on top of these lists. So if you saw, we've demoed this in a few of the keynotes. I'll just show it quickly here. This is an app that we've built. I can maybe show a little bit if we have time about what this actually looks like behind the covers. But this is just an app on top of this list. And so you'll see I can go in here and browse all the ideas that are in this list. It's the exact same thing. Custom fitted backpack is here. Custom fitted backpack is here. Choose anything. But we're reformatting it in a way that makes the most sense on mobile. We're adding in some nice things, like if you want to like this particular item, all you have to do is click, and the like count will go up. And then we've also made it really easy to submit an idea. So when you go ahead and click Submit, come on now. We reformat the screen in a nice way. We give you one clear text box. And instead of having a drop-down of category, you just get to pick and choose the one that goes right here. And of course, as soon as you enter this data, it goes back into the list on the back end. So lists, a great way to collaborate together on these sort of lightweight, sort of custom apps that are easy for people to build. You don't have to spin up a whole team that's dedicated on app building. Really, really easy access to those things. Okay, documents and lists are the place where you get a bunch of work done on top of custom apps like things like Power Apps, custom processes like Flow. How do you get a view of what's actually happening across all these apps? How do you keep track of what's relevant in your team site? How do you know the most important things to find? Well, there we've updated the home page. So we'll take a look at what the new home page looks like. It's going to paint there. And we've really updated the homepage to focus on bringing you the information that's going to be most relevant by default for the site that you're on. Of course, we'll have the full ability to customize the page. We'll look at that a little bit later on. But we wanted right from the start to make sure that people could find the things that matter most to them, understand what's happening in the site, and get right to work. So we lead with this concept of news, which we introduced on Monday. News is the way to highlight the most important things in your team site. And it's meant to be sort of a constantly updating list of stories and things you want to point people to. You can point them to content in the team site. You can write your own sort of page, a blog, to put some ideas down. You can point to content outside the team site. But it just brings all these things together. So you'll see we can click through on one of these guys. And we get a little write-up of this roadshow deck that someone put together. The page technology behind this is our new modern publishing tech. We have a session coming up on that tomorrow morning, I believe, where you can learn more about it. But it's a way to combine text, image previews, search results, actual live documents right here, video. We'll have an extensible platform so people can add additional web parts in here. But a way to build up a great-looking modern page. It's fast. It's all client-side rendered. It's responsive, so if you're on a... Come on. What am I doing here? If you're on a smaller screen, there we go. You can see the page is really sort of smart as you break the size down. The header resizes, the left nav. If you looked before, we had this left navigation here. As you get smaller, we realized that, well, we probably shouldn't take up quite so much space with that navigation, so we put it up here, and we move the app switcher over to this area. So lots of smarts behind making these pages work great on any device, any size, any screen size. And so each of those news items is one of those pages that's in the team site. And again, we'll build up a page in just a minute so you can see how you do one of those things. So that's at the top of the home page to help you understand what's most important. We also have the ability to add just quick links out. So quick reference, if you have an operations manual that's very common for your team, you can put that here. It's very similar to the idea of pinning in a document library, sort of pinning a few documents at the top of your team site. And then we show an activity view. So we're bringing forward the activity across all the different document libraries, all the different lists that are here on the site, so you can easily catch up. What we heard from customers is one of the most common things they would do is go to a document library and just sort by modified date, so they could see the most recently modified things at the top and use that to get a sense of what's going on. We wanted to sort of elevate that concept and bring it right to the home page. So you can see right here, you get a sense of what's going on. You can click through any of these documents, any of these lists. And of course, we have similar notions within the document library itself. So when you're here, in a folder view, we've actually got the same idea we bring into the info panel. You've got your activity all integrated here, so you can quickly look just in the scope of this folder to see what's going on. But we really wanted that homepage to be a place to bring it all together. So why don't we go ahead and just look at what it takes to create one of these pages. I can do it in the context of news. I might actually just go out to the page library so you can see starting from scratch here. Again, page editing technology is something that's been in SharePoint for a while. We had these web part pages that were really great when they came out 15 years ago. We wanted to evolve the tech with it, and so this is the evolution of exactly that page technology. So if you're familiar with building a web part page, this is where we're taking the tech. So I can go over here and say, let's create a new. And of course, we still support web part pages, but we've also got this new site page. We will wait patiently for the internet to do its thing. All right, maybe we won't wait so patiently. Let's try one more time. Where was my page library? Lost myself. Okay. The internet is back. That is good news. So pages, we just give them a name, so we can say this is the Ignite conference report, and then you just sort of build it up by adding these components on the page. So we can add a text component. Whoops, let's take off caps lock. Learning about clothes at Ignite, because we all learn a lot about clothes. We get our t-shirts, we get our hats, all kinds of interesting fashion statements. We've got a rich text editor in here, so you can start to make your text look a little bit better. And then we've got this web part gallery. So this is how you go ahead and select content that you want to use to enrich the page. This will be an extendable toolbox. We've got lots of sessions on the things that are coming in here, but it's easy to pick a document either from the site or from other recent documents that you've been using. Oh, hang on a second. I might be on the wrong network. I am on the wrong network. Where's my demo Wi-Fi? So you and I are all sharing the same Wi-Fi connection. So let's see if we can switch over here. That will make the demo much better. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay, there we go. So here's just a list of the recent documents in this that I've been using across multiple sites, so I can pick any one of these. You can, of course, browse all the content directly in the site. I'm trying to think of one that actually looks interesting. This one should be a good one, so we'll put that in there. And again, it just does that online web preview of the content. We have, you'll see in a minute, we support all of the same content on our mobile devices, so on Windows Phone, iPhone, and Android. You get the same richness wherever you are, so we've got the preview right there. And then we can actually even add things in, like doing a little bit of a content search. So we can say, hey, we want to highlight either the most recent documents that are happening on this site, or you can customize this thing a little bit and say, hey, actually, let me only show you documents that match these search criteria, that have recently been added, recently been changed, maybe just the documents that have been created or modified by the owner of the group or by someone senior in the team. That was actually one of the first things we did when we had this tech, was we changed, one of the guys on my team changed our homepage to highlight documents modified by Jeff Teeper. And we thought that was an interesting view. If you were just going to pop into the SharePoint team site, Jeff is our vice president. And it's actually a pretty interesting thing to just see the documents that Jeff has touched. That gives you a pretty good idea of what's important to Jeff and what's most important to the team. So you can really sort of customize this thing in a way that really makes the most sense to you. All right, so we looked at pages there. So there's a lot that's going on in a SharePoint site. You can have lots of these pages, lots of document libraries, lots of lists. We wanted to also refresh the way you manage all that content, the way you get insight into what's happening across that content. So we refreshed the site contents pages as well. So we'll click in here. And what you can see at the bottom is we just give you the quick list of all the content that's on this site, the items that are in it when it was modified. If you have subsites, you can easily get to those. But up top, we've added a little bit of new thinking. This is just a start. Think of this sort of as a down payment on where we want to go with this technology, but starting to bring together some kind of insight into the usage that's going on here. So you can see how many views there have been. You can see which content is getting the most views. We can sort of drill in here, and you can see that the Contoso loyalty program is the winner by far. So it's just a start. We'll continue to bring more intelligence into this to actually help people both navigate through the site. We think it's pretty useful, again, if you're just a visitor to the site, to see what's going on. But also as the owner of the site or as the owner of a group, we want to give you more and more insights into how people are collaborating together in your group, and maybe help you sort of tune things in the right way, help make sure people are finding the right content. OK, couple things left. Let me show you the integration with groups and the way we've built that together. And so again, this group, the Office 365 group, is a concept we introduced last year. It's an object that lives in the Azure Active Directory. It's a shared list of members and owners and a little bit of policy that describes that group, the people who are working together, how they're going to work together, and then all of the applications or the workloads across Office 365 provide capabilities that help that group work together. So when a group shows up in the directory, Exchange creates a shared mailbox and a shared calendar so people can have conversations and can share events and event tracking. The Planner team creates a shared task board so you can create tasks across that team. Power BI creates a place in the Power BI dashboard where you can put all the insights for that team. And we'll just have more and more of the Office 365 workloads will pick that up. We announced this week that Yammer will also be participating in groups, so you'll be able to use Yammer with those as well. So from SharePoint, we've added our group integration. There's one that we put right here, which is an easy link out specifically to the group conversations, because we thought that would be the most commonly used thing. We will be watching the metrics to tell us if we got that right or not. But if you wanted to get to the other workloads, you just click here, and we bring up a link to the other things that are part of this particular group. So the conversation, the calendar, member management. If there had been a planner built out for this, you would have seen tasks showing up here. So easy ways to navigate between those things. And before I go over there, actually, I'm going to grab a link, because I want to show you the integration between SharePoint and conversations. So I'm going to go back over here to Documents. And I'm going to grab a link to this guy so I can discuss it in email. Briefly, we've really tried to rethink the way we do sharing in SharePoint. And again, this is a lesson of taking a bunch of the learnings that the OneDrive team has done on how you make things more productive and bringing those into team sites. So in the past with SharePoint, sharing has always basically been a permissioning action. The way you share a document is you actually change an ACL. You put someone in the access control list. And then you could email a link, the URL to that document to the person. And because you added them to the access control list, they can then view the document. That's fairly robust, I would say, from a sort of traditional file system, network sharing point of view. But it doesn't work very well in the integrated Office 365 world, because it turns out that people just email links back and forth. They don't actually think about, gosh, do I have to go explicitly put the permission to this document, permission for this person on the document. They just want to take a link, stick it in email, and have it work. And so we have learned from our OneDrive friends. They've built the same functionality here into SharePoint, and that's exactly what we do. When you want to talk about a document, you get a link. We'll zoom in here a little bit. You can see that it's giving me a link, and it says only people in Contoso with this link can edit the item. So this is going to be an edit link. We have the capability to actually change this, and you can say that it's only for specific people. Should it allow editing? Should it not allow editing? But we'll just go ahead and copy this. And this link works exactly like email. So I want to kind of drive this point home so that everyone gets it in their heads. The email security model is very simple. I send an email to you, and you can read it. It doesn't become accessible to the whole company. It's not something everyone can discover. It's just you can read it. And if you forward that email to someone else, they can read it. And if that someone decides to forward it to a huge DL that's the whole company, then everyone gets to see it. But the act of just sending the email doesn't cause discovery or make it searchable by the whole company. It's just the person I send it to. That's exactly how these links work. So I created this link. It doesn't change the permissions. It doesn't make it show up in Delve. It doesn't make it show up in Search. But it does make it possible for me to go over to Mail. Oh, sorry, I was going to use the group link just to drive the point home. So we'll click here on Conversations. We'll go over to the conversations for this group. Wait for it to load up here. OK, so I'm going to do a new conversation. And I will say, this is an interesting document. I'm just going to paste it in. You can see it looks a little bit different from a standard SharePoint link, if you're familiar with those. And it's actually going out. There we go. And because we've got the right integration between SharePoint and Exchange, it's able to go out and understands that that link is a SharePoint document. It pulls the preview right into the email here, so you get a nice, rich sense of it. And now anyone I send this email to, whether it's in the group, whether it's a different group, whether it's someone else inside the company, will be able to have access to this document. No more access denied. No more access request. You send the link. It works. Yes? Maybe? I'm excited about that. So we've got the other integration points with groups here. We've got our shared calendar. As I mentioned, we have a Planner and Power BI integration as well. Let me wrap this portion up by just showing you what we've done on the mobile devices. My phone here is number 6. OK, so this is my iOS device. We've got the new SharePoint mobile app. I'm able to drill in here. I'm able to see the same list of sites and all the sites that matter to me. Of course, I can drill into the one we were looking at here. Here's that loyalty program. We start you off on a very similar kind of homepage experience. Come on, little phone. You've got access to all the content here, so you can switch around between your different document libraries. You can see what's happening. There we go. All my content showed up. So again, we lead. Oh, something went wrong. I think another demoer is having fun with this page, because that's an interesting error. But we've got the news right up there. We can click through on this thing. We can see that exact same content render here on the phone in a mobile-friendly way. It's a very clean look, as you can tell. It's not very cluttered. There we go. So we've got our text coming in. We don't yet have the ability to do a native preview of the app, the same thing that you were seeing when we hosted that web viewer. So we just show you one screenshot of the slide, and of course you can click through and open directly in PowerPoint on the phone. So we've got that there. We've got our lists that show up here. So here's that same regional launch plan list. But let me actually, I'm going to, whoops, I must have opened the wrong thing. It's opening files. I'm going to switch over to Android for a second, because I'll show you something else that we're about to bring out that I'm pretty excited about, which is integration between the SharePoint app. Oop, hang on one second. I'm going to put you back while I put my passcode in. Between the SharePoint app and between Power Apps. And actually, this guy fell asleep on me, so hang on one more second. Nobody else connect to this Miracast, please. OK, great. So here's my SharePoint app running on Android. We will go into that loyalty program. You can see, by the way, that we're really trying to focus on making sure that the apps feel authentic to the platform that they run on. So the navigation between the files and the lists is different on Android. It's following the Android best practices so that it feels native like an Android app. The iPhone app feels like a native iOS app. But we can go over here to my lists. We can go to Rewards Brainstorm. And if everything is working right, so this is a SharePoint, the native app rendering the view of the list. It doesn't have any of that customized form. It just gets you the data that's there. But because we have a Power App, we can go over here and tap, and we're just going to open that thing right up in Power Apps. And it seems to have forgotten it's actually open in the background, but it's going to reopen it. So give us just a moment here. Maybe I clicked on the wrong one. Hang on a sec. No, it's good. This one's not a network thing. Thanks. OK, let's try that one. So my apologies. We'll go through this here. And it will look impressive in just a minute. But the key thing is that we've gotten that handoff between the apps. That's something we're really working on across the Office 365 app ecosystem. So when you're in the SharePoint app, when you want to work deeply with files, we actually cross-link you over to the OneDrive app. When you're looking at a group site in SharePoint and you want to do conversations, we cross-link you over to the group app. And, well, let's switch back to a different Power Apps view. That's what I get for showing preview code. It's why we have not released it yet. But it will be there soon. But you'll get the same sense. Here's the native Power App running in iOS. So you can see we had that exact same thing that I had running on my desktop before, just connects in here. So that was sort of a brief tour across a very broad set of surface area and team sites. But again, the thing I want you to take away, the productivity of OneDrive being merged with the power of SharePoint. Almost everything I showed you is at least available in first release. A few of the things like news will be coming a little bit later. We'll talk about that timeline soon. But the document libraries are out there, lists are out there. You can get hands-on with these things. You can start building flows and Power Apps now and start to get familiar with this new technology. All right. So why do we build a team site? Why do we build all that stuff? I hope that some of the value came through there in the demos, and you started to see why we think there's more to team collaboration than just a shared folder, which we do, again, we do also. You're welcome to do a shared folder, but we think there's a lot more opportunity to bring value and productivity in. And so I think about it in these three areas here. The first is that it's team-centric, which is to say it's owned by the team, unlike a shared folder in a OneDrive, which belongs to a person, and if that person leaves the organization, the folder goes away, or if that person changes team, and they feel like, oh, I don't really want to be in charge of this folder anymore, what do I do with it? The team site is owned by the team, and this is even better with the integration with Office 365 groups. So when you create a group in the directory, you specify who are the owners for the group. The owners of that group are the owners of the team site, now and forever. That's the way it works. As the group sort of changes over time, you can change owners. The team site ownership changes also. The members of the group always have access to the team site. So we really like the idea of a place that belongs to the team, whose life cycle is governed by that group object in the directory. The second is really structuring content. So again, a shared folder is a fine way for doing quick, lightweight collaboration. But as you get into richer scenarios, you want ways to add custom views. You want to add custom metadata. You want to add Power Apps. You want to add Flow. You want to add IRM. You want to add document data loss prevention. All those things you can build on top of the team site. And so we think it's great to have that ability to structure sort of enterprise content management capabilities. And then last but not least, the team site is a place to do customization so that you actually get to bring some of your team's personality, some of the most important information forward into that site in a way that you can't if you just have a shared folder. That's always been a key part of SharePoint. It's why we call it a team site, as in website, as in a thing you can customize and build and put together, as opposed to just a shared team folder or something like that. So I want to talk a little bit more about customization because I know folks have been interested in where we're going with customization in the modern user experience. We, frankly, I think didn't do a great job explaining it when we first brought the modern experience out. So let me go ahead and just talk about this and set some context. We absolutely think that it's critical to team collaboration to be able to customize and extend your user experience. We're committed to that. We're going to continue to invest in it. We think that's one of the great values of SharePoint. What we want to do is make sure that we have extensions that meet these three goals up here: governed, scoped, and declarative. So we want to empower and democratize and let people customize the sites in the way that makes sense to them. We don't necessarily want to allow every person in the organization to write arbitrary JavaScript on any page that is accessed by people in the company. So we're really looking at more of a governed model, and we're looking at a way of helping people focus and say this customization is meant to apply just to this part of the page or just to this particular capability. And we think that's important both from going to be a security standpoint going forward, but also as we think about how to bring those customizations into the mobile world. We want to make sure that it's not just arbitrary JavaScript, because we're going to have a hard time reflecting that in a sort of authentic way on those mobile apps. So we're looking at a bunch of options here. We have some sessions I mentioned at the bottom where we'll talk more about it. But we do have some things that work today, so I want to highlight those. Custom actions in the command bar in the context menu. I actually didn't show it in my demo, or I didn't talk about it, but there was a button in the command bar that said DocuSign. There was also a context menu for DocuSign. We can switch over and look at that in a second just to drive that home. Those work today. That's a great example of a very scoped, semantic form of customization, where you're able to say, hey, on every selected document, I'd like to have this extra set of options. We can express that in the web UX. We will be able to, not yet, but we will be able to express that in the mobile apps as well. So we're excited about that. The other area where I know people were concerned is that, hey, can we actually edit these pages in the same way that in the former SharePoint technology had web part pages everywhere? You could always extend your page. You could add custom text. You could add custom graphics. We are going to support that. I will demo in just a second the coming functionality of being able to edit the home page, so we're excited to be able to bring that forward. And then we have some things that we need to invest in the new UX, and so we're candid about we don't have them yet. If you depend on these things, that's a reason that we actually will automatically take you back to the classic user experience for now until we support those things in the modern user experience. So things like the custom field views, actually being able to embed the document library or a list as a web part on other pages. We have to bring that around, and the full set of branding and theming. We support some of the theming if you use the composed looks and themes from classic SharePoint. We bring some of those elements forward. We have a lot more that's going to come in branding and theming. We have another session on that later today where you can learn more about it. And then the last point, just to make, because there was a lot of concern and we haven't said it clearly enough, so I will try to be as clear as possible. We will support Classic for as long as it takes for us to not need to support Classic anymore. So my team has a dashboard where we look every day at the % of our users who are using the modern document library UX versus the classic UX. It is not 100%, which tells us, sorry, it's not 100% using the modern, which tells us that there is a need for classic. I will celebrate the day when we are at 99.99% of users using the modern UX, and that's when I will come back and say, hey, we're ready to turn off classic. Let's talk about what that's going to look like. Let's talk about what the timeline is. Until I get that number up to near 100%, we're not even going to talk about what the deprecation is for classic. We're going to keep it. We're going to support it. Everything is still going to work there. We're not changing a single thing. You still have the administrative capability to go to any site, any document library, and say, always use classic mode for this particular document library or list. So we'll keep it there. We'll keep all your scenarios working until we have evidence that says everything's working in the new UX also. Clear? Yeah? OK, good. Governance. Get lots of questions about what's happening with governance, in particular with this integration with groups. So I'm going to talk lightly about it here. There was actually a whole session that Eric Zenz and Christoph did, I think, yesterday on governance of groups and management of groups in Azure Active Directory and the capabilities that are coming there. I encourage you to go back and watch that session, catch up on it to see what happened. But these are just a few of the overall areas that we're investing in. We do want to make sure that self-service creation is on for as many people as possible. We think that's part of empowering users to actually get their work done. Make sure that when they need to create a site, when they want to collaborate with people, they're just a click away from it. So we are going to be promoting self-service, but we have a bunch of policies that you can use to govern how and when self-service creation happens. So we're going to have naming policies for groups. We're going to have the ability to specify whether groups are public. Everyone in the company can see them, or whether they're private, limited to just a few set of people. We have the ability to add classification of a group. So you can add a tag onto the group that describes the content, and you can later use to go back and audit and see if people are following your usage guidelines in the right way. We actually have a way to put those usage guidelines right in. We'll look at that all in the next demo coming up. And then, of course, you can actually choose to restrict who in your company is allowed to create groups. We would prefer that everyone be allowed to, of course, but if there's a need to say, look, there's only this set of people should be the ones who can actually create these new groups, you can express that as well. And SharePoint, like any other Office 365 workload that supports groups, will honor those settings there. So that's on self-service creation. Guest policies are something that we think is really important. We've done a bunch of work in SharePoint over the last 3 years on how you manage which of your SharePoint content is internal only versus which is available externally. We're bringing the same capabilities into groups. So the AAD object has a policy that says, can external users be members of this group or not? So that's one way you can control the access. But we also have even finer grained access at the SharePoint layer. So everything that we've done before around, can you email a link to a document to someone outside the company? Does that link work for them or not? Can people who have been invited as guests to other groups, can they get access to content in this site? All those capabilities continue to exist in SharePoint. We think that's pretty important to give you the right capabilities to control how content is showing up inside and outside the company. And then site management is the one where we know there's a lot of questions. Also, in particular, if you've been using groups, you notice that they don't show up in the SharePoint tenant admin site collection management UX. And we get a lot of questions about, why is that? What are we supposed to take away from that? So at a high level, what I want you to think of is if a site is attached to a group, and of course you can still have sites that aren't attached to groups. If a site is attached to a group, we want as much as possible to use everything about that group to govern the site. And so we don't want to be in a world where, for example, you delete the site, but the group is still there. Because then you go to the group and you click on the Files tab, and there's no SharePoint. And should we create a new site? We don't really know why you deleted that site in the first place. It gets pretty confusing. So we've just bound as much of the site lifetime as possible to the group. When the group is deleted, the site gets deleted. If the group gets undeleted and you bring it back out of the recycle bin, the site comes back out of the recycle bin. If you change the group owner, we change the site owner. So those are the things. Ownership, lifetime, and membership are all tied to that AAD group. We expect to see even more capabilities, as I mentioned. They talked about in the other session, the things that are coming there to help do things like lifetime and sort of attestation and expiration of groups. And all of that will just accrue to the site that belongs to the group. There are a few things that are unique to the SharePoint site that are not part of the group. And so those things you can manage through SharePoint. Storage quota is one of them. So if, in general, our quota model now is we give you a great big pool of quota for the tenant. Sites can use as much or as little as they want. But if you have a particular need to govern a particular group and say, boy, these people are maybe going a little bit crazy, I'm going to limit them to only, whatever it is, 100 gigabytes. You can do that through SharePoint PowerShell. We don't have it in the tenant admin user experience yet. We will, but for now, you can go to PowerShell. You can do set SPO site, and you can set the storage quota. That is also where you manage those external sharing capabilities. That is not quite released yet. We were hoping to have it here at Ignite. I think it'll actually trickle out probably in the next month or so. So you'll be able to go to any SharePoint site through that PowerShell, set SPO site. There's a flag there. So the two flags we'll support. There's one called -storage quota, which is your storage quota, and there's a flag called sharing capabilities, which manages those external capabilities. So those are the things that will be manageable directly through SharePoint. And then last but not least, we have so much functionality around information protection, whether it's auditing, whether it's the aggregated reporting, whether it's the data loss prevention, whether it's the info rights management. We support all of those things in all of our SharePoint sites, whether it's OneDrive, whether it's a legacy sort of classic team site not attached to a group, whether it's a team site that is attached to a group, all those things come through. I tried to get a list of the sessions, and I was going to run out of room. So I just put a few of them up here, but there's tons and tons of stuff to look at. OK, let me do just a little bit of a sneak peek of some things that are coming. And I'll make sure we leave enough time for questions at the end. OK, so let's talk about self-service site creation. We've had it as a capability in SharePoint. Here we go. For some time, but we know it wasn't quite governable in the way that people wanted, and it created subwebs instead of site collections, which some people didn't think was a great idea. And just frankly, it wasn't a very fast experience. So we're fixing that. This is SharePoint Home, which you'll hear about in other talks. It brings my personal view of all the information across the company that I care about. I won't go too much into it here, other than to say there's a button called Create Site. And when I click Create Site, we bring up our new modern site creation experience. Super easy here. We can call this one Project PKM. And you can see this is actually integrated in with the whole group creation infrastructure. So it's going to get a group email. I can say it's going to be public or it's going to be private. We like to keep things public there by default. We've got this classification built in. So again, this comes out of AAD as a shared classification across all groups. The IT department gets to decide what classifications are most relevant to you. So we can decide that this is an internal use or a confidential team site. At Microsoft, we use this. We actually do a scan on a daily basis. So if someone has classified a site, we have instead of confidential, we have a thing called HBI, which I'm going to forget what it stands for, High Business Impact. That sounds right. That's a credible explanation for what HBI is. And so we have a bunch of rules that say if it's an HBI site, it really should not be shared publicly with the entire company, because it should be on a need-to-know basis. And so we look at this classification, and we're able to say, hey, HBI sites that are public, we're going to actually flip those things back and make sure that they're not shared with everyone. You can kind of write your own capabilities on top of that. We'll get smarter and smarter in the future about integrating directly with things like DLP. Briefly, some of the extensibility points. We do have this notion of usage guidelines. So if you say, well, what is confidential versus internal only? Well, you can click here. That's a link that IT can choose to add. We bring up the policies here, and you can see that they've explained the difference between all these things. So that's really great. The other thing that we know is that sometimes just a plain group site isn't enough. Sometimes you want to add a little bit of customization on top. Sometimes you want to add a custom provisioning process. So we've had a way to build that in here. We can see some other options for what kind of sites we're going to build. This is, again, an IT extensible option that we'll build into the provisioning workflow. Tick, tick, tick. So here, for example, in Contoso are lots of other options of different things you can build. Maybe you want to build a developer site because you're going to be actually writing a bunch of custom code. So you can click here to create one of those. But we've made it easy, even when you're hosting your own UX like this, we've made it easy to still connect to our main provisioning workflow. So even from here, if we say create new, we're just going to host on this page that exact same SharePoint provisioning UX. We've made that a reusable component so you can host it on any page and still give people that exact same experience. So let me go back over here and we'll just finish up. So this is how you set your owners. So let's make me the owner. And let's make Chris a member. And let's make Lincoln a member. So again, this is actually saving these members not in the SharePoint site as a SharePoint local group, but in Azure Active Directory as a shared membership object across everyone who participates in the group ecosystem. You can see the site is already ready. In the time it took me to add in those 3 people, the site has been provisioned. I can go ahead and click Finish, and it's going to take me off to my brand new group site. So that's a feature that will be coming out later this year. We're really excited about that. Great UX, integrated in with groups, lightning fast, all big steps forward for us. A couple new things I'll just show. So this is a team site that has only the default document library. So when you want to add a new document library, again, we've modernized that UX. You don't have to go off to sort of legacy-looking UX. You can just go here and say, I want a new document library. We bring in a little pane. You can say, hello, Ignite. I'm going to actually choose here to show it directly in site navigation, which is a nice feature. So I'm going to create that. Again, that's a new feature. Whoops. Boo. All right, in the interest of time, let me go to just my other site so that we'll make sure that all that stuff works there. Let's go back to the home page. Let's create a new document library. Hello, Ignite. Yay, it works. OK, so here's my document library. We've gone ahead and we've put it. We didn't put it in the left nav. So we're still working on things, obviously. That's why it's not released yet, but that'll be coming out soon, hopefully. You can use that to create new lists and libraries. The last thing I'll show off as a sneak preview is our modern version of navigation editing. So you have this navigation over here. Let's say you want to change a link. We're going to put a little edit button right here. And now we're going to make it super easy to move this thing around. You can move that guy up and put him above Notebook. You can move him up again. If you want to insert a new link, you just go ahead and click here. You'll be able to type in a URL in the display of the text. We will also support the ability to indent, make sublinks, so we can sort of shift that thing under the one above it. That's not quite working in this build, so I won't show it off. But this will also be coming soon. So just a little taste. We have a full team that's continuing to modernize and bring this new UX to every aspect of SharePoint. So there's plenty of good stuff coming ahead. Go back over here. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to do my last demo since I'm already here. Let me just show this one off. So we'll save a little bit of switching time. I want to really just drive the point home that we're bringing these capabilities to every site, not only to new sites. We thought it was really important to make sure. Sorry, hang on a second. I didn't have this tab preloaded, so let's see if I remember where I put it. There we go. Really want to drive this home. It is not the case that all the modern UX, the modern pages, all those things only apply to new sites or only apply to new groups. These are capabilities that work on any site, anywhere in SharePoint. So here's a site that I created some time back. It was created before groups were around, so it's not attached to a group. It uses a classic page here, a classic home page. But even still, when I go through and click into documents, I'm getting the modern UX. It's coming to this site. Even still, when I click through in site contents, I'm getting that new site contents page. It's coming in here. And if I want to sort of update this site and say, gosh, I would like one of those more modern pages to be my home page instead of this older wiki-style page, well, we support that also. So we can go over to site contents. We can go over to site pages. There we go. We can create a new modern page here. Internet is not happy. There we go. New home page. And let's just really quickly put that activity web part on there. OK, so now I've got my, my modern page. I'm going to go ahead and publish it. And now to make that my home page, all I have to do is click here. And we've added a command right here, make home page. OK, and now when I go home, hey, look at that, it's new home page. So even a site that was created years ago that isn't connected to a group can still take advantage of all these capabilities. No site left behind. Thank you. I think I talked about most of this, but this is the stuff that's available now, things that are in partial first release and will be coming out, and the things that are coming soon. We talked about no site left behind. Really quick, I think we sort of covered most of this. In particular, we changed the way that the group integration works, so I just wanted to recap this for everyone. Previously, when you created a group, you could only create it from Outlook. That group only got a document library. It did not get a full site. And SharePoint had sort of that separate self-service site creation. Going forward, it's very clear. Every time you create a group, it's going to get a full team site collection. Even existing groups will apply the same thing. We'll upgrade them so they get the full team site collection. You can create your group from Outlook, create it from OA, create it from SharePoint. You get the same thing no matter where you go. And if you're a SharePoint admin and it's important to you to create other kinds of site collections that don't use the group template, or site collections that are not connected to groups, you can still do that directly through SharePoint Tenant Admin. And briefly, this is kind of how it works. This is a 200-level session, so I know I get into trouble if I go too deep, but I wanted to give just a little bit of a hint of what happens here. When we talk about what you get when you create a group-affiliated site versus a classic site, really the only differences are, is it getting the, connecting to that group object for membership and for lifetime, and what SharePoint template do we use to create it. So when you go to Tenant Admin and create a new team site, we use a template under the covers we call STS#0. That's been around forever. It's the same thing you see when you create a team site and on-premise as well. We've updated that default template for groups, so it's called group#0. That is the template when I went in and went through that new provisioning flow and created the thing that had the modern homepage in the library. That's the template that I'm using. That's really the only difference, is which template you get. That template is not yet exposed in Tenant Admin, but we'll find a way to get it there. So if you want to get that exact same template but not connected to a group, that will work. The other thing we've done with that template is we've really streamlined the heck out of it. That's what lets us create it in seconds instead of in minutes. And we have this technology called fast site creation that helps us do that. And there's lots of interesting behind-the-scenes discussion about how that works, which I won't get into here, but I'm happy to talk later about that. And then just to recap on the access policies, when you connect to a group, the site collection admin, which is expressed in the object model as spsite.owner, is precisely the owners of the group. And then the way the membership works is every SharePoint web has a group called the Associated Members Group. It's sort of the default place where members go. We just go to that SharePoint group and we add the members of the group into there. That's how we make that connection. Again, there's a lot more sort of technical details behind that, but hopefully for those of you who know the seesaw model, that makes sense, and that's all I need to say about it. And then just quickly, if you're really interested in how we built that new UX, the principles we use, how we make it fast, how we make it work at different breakpoints, there's an awesome session coming up with our engineering lead and design lead who made that thing possible. And I think, again, I think we sort of covered this. So we'll go through. We're working on tons more stuff. I won't take the time to explain what all these things are, but we've spent literally the last year, we've had the engineering team full-time getting documents, getting document libraries modernized, site contents, lists, the home page, and getting the first round of Power Apps and Flow integration. And we're mostly done. It's not 100% out in the world, but we're mostly done. We're going to take that same crew of people and just keep turning the crank next year. You can see how much we've gotten done since last Ignite to this Ignite. I can't wait to come back next year and show you all the progress we've made in these areas. Nothing specific to announce, but we just want to give you a sense of the areas where we plan to invest. Little session map for those who don't have it in their heads. Most of this has already happened. The native mobile app experiences is coming up this afternoon. So you didn't miss that. Everything else. Oh, and then the business apps, a really detailed look at how Power Apps and Flow are going to work is coming up on Thursday. Everything else you have to go back in time to watch. But it's all up on the website. Fast Track, if you want to get your content into the cloud, we have a program that's free for most sort of medium to large size enterprises. I encourage you to take a look. We'll help make sure you can get your content to the cloud. Somebody else put this slide in. I guess you should go join the Microsoft Tech community. I think that's the thing. I don't know what it is. I apologize. Someone put the slide in. It must be important. Last but not least, it's always a surprise when you open your deck and there's like, oh, someone added a slide. Last but not least, please do take the time to fill in a speaker evaluation. It's important to me to understand where I can help, what content you didn't expect to see, what I can do better. And it's a great motivator for the team when they see all the comments and say, we love team sites. So put in we love team sites. The team will be very happy. Thank you for your time. We'll take some questions until someone kicks me out, and then I'll stand down there. Thanks. There are mics, so I think we're recording for another few minutes. So if you use the mic, your question will be recorded for posterity. I see one over there.
Go ahead.
Oh, there's a mic right there. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Hi. Basically, just I wanted to know why Microsoft is not improving the existing UI and then just replicating with a new UI. Since lots of the customization is already done and so many users already get to use classic UI. And again, training and then resources is involved for the modern UI. So why Microsoft is deprecating existing feature and introducing the new feature instead of the enhancement?
So why did we, I think what you're saying is you would prefer to see incremental investment on top of the classic UI as opposed to a whole new look?
Yeah, you can continue the classic experiences with the modern UI. That would be better than deprecating and implementing or introducing the new capabilities.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it is. It's a tough trade-off, and it's something that we thought a lot about. There were kind of two things going on. One was we actually really learned a lot from OneDrive, which was the first one to use that modern UI paradigm. And we actually saw the increase in productivity. We saw the increase in file sharing. We saw the increase in collaboration. And so there was actually something specific to that design. For example, getting rid of the ribbon and using that command bar actually makes a difference in how people engage and interact with their content. So we actually looked at the data there and saw that was a positive step forward. And then on the sort of technology underneath, we wanted to make sure we had tech that was 100% client-side rendered. We could build responsive UX. We could make something that worked on any device on any size. But it has been a data-driven exercise in making sure that users are more productive in the end. So I absolutely take your point that people who are familiar with the classic UX will have a learning curve and an adjustment on the new one. We'll continue to support classic. We don't want to rush you. Take your time in updating your training, but we do think it's worth it to move to the new UX.
So the big concern for the industry, once people is again gets to use with the modern UI, then Microsoft introduce some other UI.
Sorry, you have to get closer to the mic. I'm having a hard time.
See, earlier classic UI was there, right?
Yep.
And then Microsoft upgrading to the new modern UI.
Yep.
What is the roadmap? If the industry or people or user, once they are familiar with the modern UI, then Microsoft after 2 years will introduce other UI.
Yeah, well, we aim to invest for the long haul. We certainly don't expect to be in a mode where we're rewriting the UX and fundamentally changing things like moving from a ribbon to a command bar. That thing happens rarely. But it is, a sort of once a decade shift. If you look at the life of SharePoint, the ribbon's been around for about a decade, and we've found a paradigm that we think works better and that we think will last for, at least that long. So we don't want to be in a mode where, we make a decision once and we have to carry it forward forever. But we're trying to get exactly that balance right and say we're not gonna rush you forward. Stay in Classic, keep using it if you need to. But the net story is we think people will be more productive with the new UX. We don't expect to make another significant revision like this for a long time.
Thank you. Another question. All of the API and CSOM code is continue work with the new modern UI? Like we use
Yes.
the SPEI, ECM codes,
Yes.
object?
Yes, in fact, all of the new UX uses CSOM. We've made some improvements to CSOM, so based on having to build our own UX on top of it, we got to understand firsthand some of the inefficiencies in CSOM, so we've added some new APIs. If you actually look at if you spin up Fiddler and watch how the new UX drives, you'll see it's much smarter about sort of clustering and grouping requests back and forth, but all of the old APIs are still there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. Is there any type of work being done on the support for multiple languages?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Yeah, for support for multiple languages, because I'm from Montreal and we have to decide both in French and in English at all times. So is there any type of work or any type of support being worked on for multiple languages?
Yeah, for multiple languages. So the tech we've had for a while is that all of the SharePoint UX, the choice of the strings are rendered in the language passed up by the browser. So that's a feature we internally call MUI, multi-user interface. I can't remember what it's called in tenant admin. So you have to turn it on, but newer site collections and tenants should have that on by default. And it's whatever the choice of the browser is. So if you're using French OS and your language choice is French, when the browser makes the request, you should get French strings back. If you're using a Russian OS, you should get Russian strings back. If that's not working, we can follow up and see why.
We can still translate the new group template there, with the string resources.
Yeah, so then there are a few things that don't get that treatment. So for example, when you create a new document and we call it document.docx, that, because it's a property of the file itself, we can't translate that on the fly. So we use the site collection's default language to choose which string we use there. And then there are other things like public group or private group. Those should be localized, but the classifications are not localized because that's chosen by IT. So it's a little bit of a mix in there, but the primary user interface should absolutely snap to your browser language.
Thank you.
Hi. First off, I love the new SharePoint framework and where you're going with the modern experience. But in the short term, we got clients chomping in the bit to use groups and team sites together. So if we create a group #0 site, can we still go back to a classic experience while we're waiting for framework to mature and all the customizations to be ready?
Yeah, sure. Create the site, and then you can go to Site Collection Admin and say use, I forget what we call it. There's 3 buttons. We just call it Classic? Sean knows. Yeah, so you can tell it to go back to the Classic. It's groups. We're still trying to figure out the right semantic for Classic because groups have had a different UX from both the modern team site and from the old team site. So we're playing around with it a little bit, but we can take more feedback on that.
Okay, but just wanted to confirm that works. Thank you.
Yep.
With all the modern democratization of letting your users create the columns and create sites and things along those lines, is there any good guidance on those of us that are using content type hubs and manage metadata term stores and things along those lines that will actually get the users when they create a library to use the content types that we're publishing out as opposed to just going and modifying the document library on the site?
Yeah, so we actually did a session yesterday at 4, me and Chris McNulty, which you can go back and look at. We talked some of that. We haven't done a bunch of net new investment there, so it's mostly the same old capabilities about content type hubs and syndication. That's an area for investment next year to streamline some of those things. The same capabilities are all there, and we had a few hints that we talked about yesterday about how to make those things a little more effective, but it's basically the same tech you've had.
Okay. So the users are probably going to run away with doing stuff their own way. Okay, I'll go back and rewatch session. Maybe you guys have more guidance on that. Thanks.
Hi, just wanted to check. The modern UI will be available on SharePoint 2016 on-premise deployments?
I did not talk about on-premise. It is not currently available for on-prem. The way we're thinking about keeping on-premise up to date is we're going to ship things first in the cloud. We're going to get all the data. We're going to make sure it's 100% as productive as possible, and then we'll bring it to on-prem. So it's not, I don't have a date for you right now. We're going to wait until we get it 100% deployed in the cloud, till we've seen it run, till we're sure we've got it right, and then we'll have a way to bring it on-prem.
Okay.
OneDrive, the modern OneDrive UX, because it's been out for a year, they've made the decision that it's ready to bring on-prem. So in Feature Pack 1, which we announced this week, we'll include the modern OneDrive UX, but not yet the modern team site.
Okay, one more question. Group conversations, where are the conversations being stored? Are they stored within SharePoint or within Exchange?
Within Exchange. So we're really excited about that model. So moving forward, the group calendar and conversation, the group actually gets a resource mailbox in Exchange, and that's where those things are stored. Group tasks will be stored in Planner. We really want to move to that model where the sort of subject area experts get to own those things rather than having to do it in SharePoint.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. First of all, new SharePoint framework is great. My question is, in list and library, with the new improvement, you can store millions of documents. But once you hit the 5,000 threshold, most of the operations you can't do in the list. So is there any improvement in the new design?
There is nothing in the new UX I showed here that helps with the 5,000 view item limit. We are working on it. And I can't wait to come back next year and tell you what we've done.
Because problem with the
I don't have anything to
SharePoint
say right now. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. Problem with the SharePoint Online, in on-premise, you can specify the windows, so you can do some operations. Like in online, we don't have that capability. Like we can't specify the time limit in a day where you can perform those operations. We have to call Microsoft support, and depending on their mood, they will entertain our case or not. So it's not consistent.
So I'd love to follow up maybe afterwards. You can tell me the specific things that are missing online.
Okay.
And I'll let you know if we're thinking about them.
Sure. And the last question, any suggestion for the site provisioning in Office 365?
Any suggestion?
Because for the site provisioning, because we have our own custom site provisioning, we have to activate some of the feature, create some custom list. So what are the best practice for the site provisioning in Office 365?
We have a whole session on that. Sean, when is it?
Okay.
Tomorrow, says Sean. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great job. Really appreciate the work that your team's doing. Can you clarify a little bit about that whole share a link to a document and it doesn't affect the permissions in the library? Because if you have a library that is supposed to be locked down and somebody is just sharing a link, what are the options to make sure that they're not breaking the governance that you've had set up in that particular type of library?
Yeah, so it's controlled by whether the user has managed permissions. Permission? I always trip up saying that. By default, we now give all users managed permissions permission, which is a feature we call members can share. You can turn that off, and then only the people who are owners who actually have managed permission can generate those links. The thing I just encourage you to think about is what happens if you turn that off. And what we found was that we got a lot of feedback that said, man, if I can't share it that way, I'm going to download the document onto my desktop, and then I'll attach it to an email, and then I'll send it anyways.
I agree with
Alright,
you. The open is better, but you definitely have scenarios. So the other part of that question then is if you've set up policies around that site and
Yep.
somebody shares that link, does the policy override the ability of the person getting that link?
No, the policies, the policies do control in the end. So we have some policies today, for example, that say documents that are classified this way can never be shared externally. We'll just get those policies richer and richer, and they will always override.
Great. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Let me just, 1 second. You guys want to kick me out? All right. Oh, hey, look at these guys. Excellent. What's up next? Branding and customization of team sites and branding is up next. So stay put, but I'll hop down here. Just give me 1 sec.